Episode 6 of Life, Larry and the Pursuit of Unhappiness, takes one of the oldest ideas in comedy and pushes it to an extreme. Instead of rewriting history through major political changes or shocking alternate outcomes, the series imagines that the greatest moments in history were constantly interrupted by ordinary human behavior. Every sketch follows the same central idea. World-changing events become secondary because the people involved cannot stop arguing about pride, manners, reputation, or the smallest possible detail. By the end of the episode, the biggest joke is that history may remember great achievements, but the people living through those moments were still distracted by the same frustrations that exist today. The opening sketch immediately establishes this theme by placing Lawrence, Butterfield, and Elspeth in the middle of Paul Revere's famous warning. Rather than treating the alarm as a life or death emergency, the couple falls into an argument that feels remarkably familiar. Packing for survival quickly turns into a debate over vegetables, household possessions, family members, and whether seemingly unimportant belongings deserve to be saved. Every interruption delays the practical task they should actually be focused on, turning a defining moment in American history into the kind of domestic disagreement that could happen in any century. The ending of this first sketch delivers its sharpest joke when Paul Revere returns to admit that the British are not coming after all. Butterfield is not relieved. Instead, he becomes furious because Revere presented the warning as certainty rather than possibility. His complaint revolves around a single missing word. If Revere had simply said the British might be coming, none of the chaos inside the house would have happened. The humor comes from watching an enormous historical event shrink into a debate about precise wording. Larry David-style comedy has always found entertainment in technicalities, and this sketch applies that formula to one of the most famous warnings in history. There is also a subtle point beneath the comedy. Communication is often judged not only by whether it is true, but also by how carefully it is delivered. Butterfield's frustration is exaggerated for laughs, yet it reflects how people frequently become more upset by the wording of a message than by the situation itself. The sketch suggests that even history-changing announcements can be overshadowed by arguments over language and personal responsibility. The episode then jumps to the Battle of the Alamo, where another legendary story is dismantled through insecurity rather than military strategy. Samuel L. Jackson introduces the overwhelming odds facing the defenders, creating the expectation of a heroic last stand. Instead, Butterfield immediately derails every serious conversation by asking about practical concerns and, above all, Davy Crockett's famous coonskin cap. Rather than discussing battle plans, everyone becomes trapped in a conversation about appearance and image. The ending of this sketch completely reverses the mythology surrounding Crockett. Once the cap disappears, his bald head is exposed for everyone to see. General Santa Anna does not react to military intelligence or tactical opportunity. He laughs at the loss of Crockett's carefully crafted image and suddenly feels confident enough to launch the attack. The joke is that a symbol carries more power than reality itself. As long as Crockett looked like the legendary frontiersman, he inspired fear and admiration. The moment the illusion disappears, so does much of his authority. This is also a satire of personal branding long before the modern era. Crockett has become inseparable from the image represented by the cap, and losing it damages his reputation more than any battlefield defeat. The sketch argues that public perception often shapes history as much as genuine accomplishment. Once the image cracks, confidence disappears along with it. The third story shifts from military history to the women's suffrage movement through Susan B. Anthony. Unlike the previous sketches, this one takes place around a dinner table instead of a battlefield. Yet the conflict remains exactly the same because personal behavior once again overwhelms an important historical cause. Florence repeatedly ignores basic courtesy while dismissing the principles Anthony is fighting to achieve. Every rude action reinforces his inability to respect either his host or the movement itself. The ending provides the sketch's clearest political joke. When Anthony demands that Florence leave, the women vote in favor of removing him from the house. Florence instantly rejects the result because he refuses to recognize their votes. His position changes the moment democracy produces an outcome he dislikes. The irony is obvious. Someone arguing against women's political participation immediately depends on democratic principles when he believes they should benefit him. Once those same principles work against him, he suddenly claims they are invalid. The sketch is ultimately about selective belief. Florence does not oppose democracy itself. He opposes any version of democracy that limits his own influence. By reducing an enormous political struggle to a simple disagreement inside one household, the episode exposes the selfish thinking that often hides behind supposedly principled arguments. The longest and most memorable sketch centers on the Apollo 11 moon landing, and it perfectly captures the episode's overall message. Samuel L. Jackson reminds viewers of the extraordinary technological achievement that placed Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. The audience expects history, science, and exploration to dominate the conversation. Instead, the astronauts become consumed by office politics. Everything begins with Armstrong bringing thoughtful gifts for the launch team. Aldrin suddenly realizes he has brought nothing and immediately feels embarrassed. What should have been an insignificant social detail becomes the emotional foundation for everything that follows. The argument grows even larger when the astronauts discuss collecting moon rocks. Armstrong views the mission as a scientific responsibility, while Aldrin casually considers practical ways to carry them home and even jokes about their value. Their priorities could not be more different, revealing that they approach the same historic mission from completely different perspectives. The emotional turning point arrives when Armstrong reveals he has already prepared the sentence he plans to say after taking the first step. Aldrin instantly understands that history has already chosen its leading man. The first footprint, the famous quotation, and the lasting memory will all belong to Armstrong. Aldrin realizes that reaching the moon is not enough because the world will remember the person who defines the moment. When Armstrong delivers the famous line, Aldrin cannot hide his disappointment. His alternative ideas only emphasize how impossible it would have been to improve on the words that history already celebrates. His frustration grows into jealousy as Armstrong criticizes everything from his nickname to stories about his childhood. Their conversation stops resembling that of heroic explorers and instead feels like coworkers competing for recognition after a successful project. The ending of the episode reaches its funniest and most revealing image when the astronauts physically struggle on the lunar surface. The contrast is the entire joke. Humanity has achieved one of its greatest scientific accomplishments, yet the people responsible are arguing over credit, gifts, nicknames, and who gets remembered. The moon becomes less important than workplace rivalry. Rather than celebrating mankind's greatest leap, the sketch reminds viewers that human nature never changes regardless of where people happen to be standing. Buzz Aldrin's role is especially significant because he represents a universal frustration. Countless people contribute to historic achievements without becoming the face history remembers. Aldrin accomplishes something almost unimaginable by walking on the moon, yet he still feels overshadowed because Armstrong owns the defining image and the defining sentence. The episode suggests that recognition often matters as much to people as achievement itself, even when the achievement is already extraordinary. Across all 4 sketches, episode 6 follows the same pattern. Paul Revere's warning becomes an argument about wording. The Alamo becomes an argument about appearance. Susan B. Anthony's campaign becomes an argument about selective democracy. The Apollo 11 mission becomes an argument about recognition. Every legendary event is reduced to ordinary human flaws, showing that pride, insecurity, Vanity and stubbornness never disappear simply because history is unfolding around them. That shared structure is what makes the ending so satisfying. Rather than making fun of history itself, the episode pokes fun at the people inside it. The greatest achievements in civilization are presented through the same awkward social dynamics that define everyday life. Whether someone is preparing for revolution, defending the Alamo, fighting for voting rights, or walking on the moon, they are still capable of becoming distracted by ego, status, and personal grievances. That is the central joke behind life. Larry and the Pursuit of Unhappiness, and Episode 6 delivers it more consistently than any previous chapter by proving that even history's biggest milestones cannot escape the smallest human arguments.